Before the ocean swallowed the past, before the maps were rewritten and history fragmented into myths, there was another Earth, not metaphorically, but literally. An Earth that stretched farther than anything known today. Vast plains that no longer exist, forests that cover entire continents, and civilizations so advanced that what remains today are now only echoes, buried under miles of water and layers of forgotten time. Above that ancient world hung Tiamat, visible in the sky where the moon is today. Saturn loomed in the distance, not with rings, but with a form that would later be remembered symbolically as horns. The sky itself was different, and so was the consciousness of the beings living under it. This was not a primitive world. This was a world in its cycle of expansion. Civilizations had already risen for hundreds of millions of years. Risen and fallen. Not one, not two, but countless. All technological, many interstellar, and many fully aware of their place in the greater cosmic network. Atlantis and Lemuria were not the beginning. They were simply the last great chapter before collapse. Atlantis was not a continent. It was a civilization, a global society with its capital located in what is now submerged beneath the Atlantic, near the region associated today with the Bermuda Triangle. Its influence stretched across the planet, with major centers in places that are now Iraq, the Mediterranean, and South America. On the opposite side of the world stood Lemuria, also not a continent, but a civilization, with its capital city known as Mu, built upon a landmass that no longer exists, called Oceania. It was originally founded as a Taigetan colony, a place where beings from beyond Earth, established a presence, later joined by many others, including those fleeing the control, the tyranny of Atlantis. Because Atlantis was not benevolent. At its core, it carried the influence of genetic manipulation, specifically the creation of what became known as Homo Atlantis, a modified Lyrian human altered through reptilian intervention to be more controllable, more disconnected, and easier to dominate. A slave race, disconnected from its source. And this is where the pattern begins to look familiar. Because to maintain such manipulation, the being must be kept in a low frequency state, disconnected from its true identity, locked in victimhood, and stripped of willpower, surrounded by systems that reinforce limitation. That system did not end with Atlantis. It continued. Then came the War of Tiamat, a cataclysm so vast that it reshaped the entire planet. Water rose, land disappeared, and continents sank. The majority of the population perished, and with them, the memory of what Earth once was. 5 entire continental regions vanished beneath the oceans. What remained became the fragmented world we know today. But not everyone died. The survivors of Lemuria fled. Many of them carried Taigetan lineage, mixed with altered Homo Atlantis population. They moved towards what is now North America, South America, and Japan. But they knew something important. They were still being hunted. So they did not rebuild on the surface. They went below. Drawn by knowledge passed down from before the collapse, they entered the caverns beneath Mount Shasta and other key locations, moving deeper into the earth, into spaces where the influence of the surface control system, what we now call the Matrix, was much weaker. This was not survival, this was transformation. They still possessed fragments of advanced technology, though much of it had been lost in the flood. But more important than technology was their frequency, their intention, their decision to live differently. And over thousands of years, they built something new, an intra-terrestrial civilization. Not hidden out of fear, but existing in a different vibrational state. A society that gradually spread beneath the entire planet, forming networks of cities, connections, and passageways, becoming what is now known as Agartha. And at the center of this network, one city became its heart, Great Shambala. Located beneath what is now the Gobi Desert, spanning regions of Mongolia and northern China, it is not just a city, but a central node of consciousness, governance, and a coordination for this inner world civilization. Another, more concealed access point exists in the Himalayas, often referred to as a secondary or minor Shambhala, though even that is far beyond what surface understanding can grasp. These are not just physical locations, they're frequency anchors. The Agarthans, descendants of Lemurians, Taygetians, and altered humans who reclaimed their connection, maintained a high vibrational state. Through their will to live well, to remain aligned, to preserve their identity, they stabilized themselves in what could be described as a very low 5D state. Not fully removed from the physical, but not bound entirely by it either. This is why they could remain hidden. Not just because they were underground, but because they were out of phase. They expanded across the planet, creating a global intra-terrestrial society, even maintaining control over the polar entrances, the North Pole and the South Pole, the primary energetic gateways into the inner Earth system. For a time, they were stable, but not completely untouched. Just as before, the vulnerability exists where frequency drops. The regions of Agartha closest to the surface, operating in 3D and 4D ranges, became points of entry once again. Reptilian forces infiltrated these outer zones, not the core, not the deeper Shambhala frequencies, but the accessible edges. And over time, control was lost over the entrances. Communication with external groups, including the Federation, became unstable, inconsistent, and unreliable. Still, the core remains. Shambhala, in its true form, has not fallen. It exists beyond the reach of the lower frequency incursions. And yet, on the surface, its name has been taken, distorted, and repurposed. The so-called Great White Brotherhood is one such distortion, a construct tied to surface-level secret societies, particularly Masonic structures, operating within duality, presenting themselves as forces of light in opposition to darkness, reinforcing polarity rather than transcending it. That is not Shambhala. That is theater. The real Shambhala does not participate in dualistic branding. It does not declare itself as white against black. It does not seek followers, nor does it reveal itself through hierarchical control systems. It simply exists, and occasionally it reaches out. The Agarthans are involved with the surface world, though to what extent remains unclear. This interaction is subtle, selective, and frequency dependent. They do not intervene openly because doing so would disrupt the very framework that defines the surface reality. Instead, contact happens in other ways, through dreams, through altered states, through moments where perception shifts just enough to glimpse something beyond the constructed world. And when that happens, there is a feeling that cannot be explained. Not discovery, but recognition. Because Shambhala is not just beneath your feet. It's something your consciousness already knows. Not as a place you find, but as a state that you remember. Thank you for joining me on this short video about Shambhala, the Agarthans, the Homo Atlanteans. And thank you for watching.